The piercing winter wind howled through the cracks of the barn as Olivia Barton huddled deeper into her tattered coat, her fingers numb with cold and her body trembling uncontrollably. She had never imagined that her journey west would lead her here, seeking shelter in a stranger's barn on the outskirts of Pioche, Nevada, in the bitter December of 1876, with nothing but the clothes on her back and the haunting memories of everything she'd lost. The journey from Boston had depleted her funds and her spirit. After the stagecoach had left her in town with her single trunk, the boarding house had turned her away, no room for a single woman with barely enough money for a week's stay. As darkness fell along with the snow, she had stumbled upon this barn, its weathered doors mercifully unlocked. She told herself she would rest just long enough to regain feeling in her limbs before moving on, though to where, she had no idea. Snow had begun piling against the barn doors when Olivia heard the crunch of boots on frozen ground. The doors flung open with such force that she scrambled backward into the shadows, startled by the tall silhouette framed against the white landscape. "Who the hell is in here?" A deep voice cut through the darkness like a knife. The barn lantern flared to life, illuminating the face of the most intimidating man Olivia had ever encountered. Broad-shouldered and towering, with a scar running across his left cheek, he wore the look of someone who had seen the darkest sides of humanity and contributed to them. His steely gray eyes narrowed when they found her huddled in the hay, his hand instinctively moving toward the holster at his hip. I'm so sorry," Olivia stammered, her teeth chattering. "I just needed shelter from the cold. I'll leave right away." She attempted to stand but found her legs had gone numb from the cold. She collapsed back into the hay, mortified by her weakness before this dangerous-looking stranger. "Trespassing is a good way to get yourself shot in these parts," he growled, but something in his expression shifted as he took in her blue-tinged lips and shaking form. "What the devil is a woman like you doing out here alone?" "I arrived in Pioche today," she managed, her voice barely a whisper. "The boarding house was full. I had nowhere to go." The man studied her for a long, uncomfortable moment, his face a mask of suspicion and barely contained irritation. "Name's Adam Jameson. This is my ranch you're trespassing on." He hesitated, then added with visible reluctance, "You look half dead from cold. I suppose you'd better come to the house before you freeze completely." Olivia stared at him in disbelief. "I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition, it's common sense." He cut her off sharply. "Unless you prefer to die out here. Makes no difference to me, but I'd rather not have to bury a body come morning." His blunt words stunned her, but when he extended a gloved hand, she took it, gasping as he pulled her effortlessly to her feet. The world tilted alarmingly, and she swayed, her vision darkening at the edges. Adam Jameson muttered a curse as he caught her against his chest. The last thing Olivia felt was the surprising warmth of his arms as he lifted her, before consciousness slipped away completely. When Olivia awoke, she found herself before a crackling fire, wrapped in several thick woolen blankets. For a moment, she thought she might be dreaming. The warmth felt so heavenly after the bone-deep cold of the barn. But then her eyes focused on the man sitting across from her, cleaning a pistol with methodical precision, and reality came rushing back. "You fainted," he stated without looking up. "Been out for about an hour." "I'm sorry to trouble you, Mr. Jameson," she said, her voice hoarse. "Adam," he corrected, finally looking at her. His gray eyes were still hard, but something else lingered there now, curiosity. "Perhaps. There's stew on the stove. You should eat." Olivia realized she was ravenous. She hadn't eaten since the meager breakfast on the stagecoach that morning. "Thank you. That's very kind." A brief, humorless smile touched his lips. "Kind isn't a word folks around here would use for me, Mississippi." "Barton." "Olivia Barton," she supplied, carefully extracting herself from the cocoon of blankets. Her legs felt steadier now as she followed him to the simple kitchen. The cabin was Spartan but clean, with few personal touches. A bookshelf held a handful of worn volumes, a rifle rack adorned one wall, and a desk in the corner held papers and maps. Nothing suggested a woman's touch, and Olivia wondered if Adam lived entirely alone out here. He ladled stew into a bowl and set it before her without ceremony. "Eat. Then you can tell me what brings a proper Eastern lady to the middle of nowhere in winter." The stew was surprisingly good hearty venison with potatoes and carrots. Olivia ate slowly, aware of his scrutiny. When she'd finished half the bowl, she set down her spoon. "I came to take a position as a schoolteacher," she explained. "The town council wrote that Pioche was expanding and needed someone to educate the children. But when I arrived, I discovered the position had been filled 3 weeks ago." She swallowed hard. "They claimed they sent a telegram to inform me, but I never received it." "Typical Pioche efficiency," Adam remarked dryly. "I spent nearly everything I had on the journey west. I have some savings, but not enough to return east immediately." Olivia stared into her bowl, embarrassed by her predicament. "I thought I would find work and lodging easily, but the town is much smaller than I expected." "Mining town," Adam said shortly. "Silver booms slowing. Half the claims that looked promising last year have dried up. Town's got more saloons than sense, and more men than respectable work for a woman like you." His bluntness made her flinch, but Olivia appreciated not being fed comforting lies. "I see. Well, I'll find something. I'm not afraid of hard work." Adam's expression remained impassive, but he studied her with those penetrating eyes. "You can stay here tonight. Spare room's cold but better than the barn. Tomorrow I'll take you back to town. Sheriff Miller might know of work." "I couldn't impose further. Not an imposition. Simple Christian charity," he interrupted, though his tone suggested charity was a concept he didn't often entertain. "Unless you'd prefer the barn after all." Despite his harsh manner, Olivia felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Jameson, Adam. I won't forget your kindness." He looked away uncomfortably. "Don't thank me yet. Pioche isn't kind to dreamers or the unprepared. And I've got a reputation that'll make folks wonder about you if they know you stayed here." "What sort of reputation?" Olivia asked before she could stop herself. Adam's scarred face hardened. "The kind that keeps people away, which is exactly how I like it." He stood abruptly. "Finish your stew. I'll show you the room." Olivia watched him stride away, wondering what circumstances had shaped this solitary, intimidating man. Despite his gruff exterior, he had taken her in when others had turned her away. There was kindness beneath that hardened surface kindness he seemed determined to hide. Morning came with pale winter sunlight streaming through the small window of the spare room. Olivia awakened to the smell of coffee and bacon, her body stiff but remarkably refreshed after sleeping in a real bed. The room was sparsely furnished, just the narrow bed, a small chest of drawers, and a chair, but it had been clean and warm enough under the pile of quilts Adam had provided. She smoothed her rumpled dress as best she could and pinned her chestnut hair into a simple bun, wishing she had access to her trunk, which remained at the stagecoach office in town. When she emerged from the room, Adam was already dressed for the day, his dark hair damp from washing. "Morning," he said curtly, pushing a plate of bacon and beans toward her. "Eat quick. I want to get to town and back before the weather turns again." "You're predicting more snow?" Olivia asked, taking a seat at the rough wooden table. "Sky's got that look." He poured her coffee in a chipped mug. "Ranch work won't wait for weather." As they ate in silence, Olivia studied her reluctant host. In daylight, Adam Jameson looked no less intimidating than he had the previous night. His face was weathered by sun and wind, the scar on his cheek a stark white line against his tan skin. Yet there was a quiet competence in his movements, a steadiness that made her feel strangely safe despite his forbidding demeanor. "Thank you for breakfast," she said when she'd finished. "And for the room. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't found me." Adam merely grunted in acknowledgement. "Get your coat. Wagon's already hitched." The journey to Pioche took almost an hour over the rutted, frozen road. Adam drove the team with confident hands, saying little. Olivia found herself filling the silence with nervous chatter about her journey west, her teaching experience in Boston, and her hopes for a new life in Nevada. Adam offered only occasional grunts of acknowledgement, but she noticed he listened attentively, his sharp eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Why did you leave Boston?" he finally asked as the mining town came into view. "Seems a woman with education would have better prospects there." Olivia's flow of words halted. "I needed a change," she said carefully. "After my parents died, there was little keeping me there." Adam gave her a sidelong glance that suggested he knew she wasn't telling the whole truth, but he didn't press. Most folks don't come to Nevada looking for a change. They come running from something. Before she could respond, they were entering Pioche proper, a haphazard collection of wooden buildings clinging to the sides of the steep hills, dominated by the imposing headframes of the silver mines. Despite the morning hour, the main street bustled with activity miners heading to or from shifts, supply wagons unloading goods, and saloon girls heading home after a night's work. Adam guided the wagon to the sheriff's office, a small building wedged between the assay office and a general store. "Wait here," he instructed before disappearing inside. Olivia sat nervously, aware of the curious glances directed her way. A woman sitting alone in a wagon was apparently enough to draw attention in Pioche. She straightened her back and tried to look composed, though her heart sank as she contemplated her uncertain future in this rough town. Adam emerged 10 minutes later with a stocky, middle-aged man in a sheriff's badge. "Miss Barton, this is Sheriff Miller," Adam introduced. "He's got some ideas about work." Sheriff Miller tipped his hat politely. "Madam, shame about that teaching position mix-up. Town council's got more ambition than organization sometimes." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Sheriff," Olivia replied. "Mr. Jameson says you might know of available work?" "Indeed I might. Mrs. Henderson at the Silver Palace Hotel needs help with cleaning and cooking. Not glamorous work, but she pays fair and includes a room in the back. And Widow Sullivan at the Mercantile mentioned needing someone who can keep accounts and write letters." The sheriff glanced at Adam. "Though I'm surprised Jameson here is playing Good Samaritan. Not his usual role." Adam's jaw tightened. "Just doing what anyone would." "That's just it," Miller replied with raised eyebrows. "You ain't just anyone around these parts, are you?" Olivia sensed tension between the men and hurried to change the subject. "Either position sounds promising, Sheriff. I'm grateful for any opportunity." "Let's try the hotel first," Miller suggested. "Mrs. Henderson's a good Christian woman, strict but fair." Adam helped Olivia down from the wagon, his touch brief and impersonal. "I'll get your trunk from the stage office," he said. "Meet you at the hotel when you're done with Miller." As he turned to leave, Olivia caught his sleeve. "Thank you again, Mr. Jameson. Truly." Something flickered in his gray eyes, discomfort, perhaps, or something deeper. He nodded once, then strode away without another word. Mrs. Henderson proved to be a brisk, no-nonsense woman in her 50s who looked Olivia up and down with shrewd assessment before agreeing to hire her. "I need someone reliable who won't be distracted by every miner with a smile and a week's wages," she declared. "Rooms small but clean, meals included, Sundays off unless we're busy. You can start tomorrow." Relief washed over Olivia. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. I won't disappoint you. See that you don't, the older woman replied. And might I ask where you spent last night, Miss Barton? Sheriff Miller was rather vague on that point. Olivia hesitated, recalling Adam's comment about his reputation. I found shelter at a ranch outside town, she said carefully. Mrs. Henderson's eyebrows rose. Not Adam Jameson's place? At Olivia's nod, the woman's expression grew troubled. I see. Well, what's done is done, but you should know that Mr. Jameson isn't well regarded in Pioche. Keeps to himself, has a violent history. They call him the Widowmaker, after that business with the Crawford gang 3 years back. Widowmaker, Olivia echoed, stunned. 5 men dead by his hand in less than 2 minutes, Mrs. Henderson confirmed grimly. They say he hunted down the rest of the gang one by one after that. Not a man to associate with if you value your reputation, Miss Barton. Before Olivia could process this revelation, the hotel door opened and Adam himself entered, carrying her trunk. His eyes met hers across the lobby, and something in his expression told her he knew exactly what Mrs. Henderson had been saying. Your belongings, Miss Barton, he said formally, setting the trunk down. I trust you've secured employment? Yes, Olivia managed, her mind still reeling. Mrs. Henderson has kindly offered me a position here at the hotel. Good. Adam nodded to Mrs. Henderson, who returned the gesture stiffly. Then my duty's done. Good day, ladies. He turned to leave, his tall frame rigid with dignity despite the clear hostility emanating from Mrs. Henderson. Olivia felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to defend him, to acknowledge the kindness he'd shown her when no one else would. Mr. Jameson, she called, causing him to pause at the door. Thank you for everything. I hope I'll see you again. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly masked. Doubtful, Miss Barton. I don't come to town often. With that, he departed, leaving a charged silence in his wake. Mrs. Henderson clicked her tongue disapprovingly. Best forget that man, Miss Barton. Nothing but trouble comes from associating with his kind. But as Olivia followed her new employer to see her room, she couldn't help wondering about the man who had saved her from freezing in his barn, a man with a deadly reputation who had nonetheless shown her unexpected kindness. There was more to Adam Jameson than his fearsome reputation suggested, and despite Mrs. Henderson's warning, Olivia found herself hoping their paths would cross again. The first weeks at the Silver Palace Hotel passed in a blur of hard work and adjustment. Olivia rose before dawn to help prepare breakfast for the guests, spent her days cleaning rooms and washing linens, and collapsed into exhausted sleep each night in her tiny back room. The work was physically demanding, far different from teaching, but she tackled it with determination, grateful for the roof over her head and regular meals. Mrs. Henderson proved to be a demanding but fair employer who gradually warmed to Olivia as she demonstrated her willingness to work hard and learn quickly. The other hotel employees, a cook named Martha and 2 young maids, Sally and Rebecca, became friendly acquaintances, though Olivia sensed they kept a certain distance, perhaps seeing her as temporary or too educated for their circle. On her Sundays off, Olivia explored Pioche, finding it a strange mixture of frontier roughness and attempts at civilization. The Methodist Church stood proudly on the hill, while a dozen saloons and 2 brothels operated in full view along the main street. Mining operations dominated the economy, with the constant clanking of equipment and the rumble of or carts creating a perpetual background noise. She wrote letters to her former colleagues in Boston, carefully omitting the more difficult aspects of her new life. She visited the Mercantile and made the acquaintance of Widow Sullivan, a shrewd businesswoman who offered Olivia additional work keeping her accounts on Sunday afternoons, an arrangement that supplemented her meager hotel wages and allowed her to use her education. Throughout these weeks, Olivia found her thoughts returning often to Adam Jameson. Despite Mrs. Henderson's warnings and the whispers she occasionally overheard about the Widowmaker, She couldn't reconcile the fearsome reputation with the man who had taken her in from the cold. She made discreet inquiries about him, learning that he rarely came to town except to sell cattle or purchase supplies, and that most people gave him a wide berth when he did appear. It was nearly a month after her arrival in Pioche when Olivia encountered Adam again. She was returning from the mercantile late one Sunday afternoon, her arms laden with parcels containing fabric for a new dress and some much-needed personal items, when a commotion outside the Broken Spur saloon caught her attention. 3 miners, clearly deep in their cups despite the early hour, had surrounded a young Chinese man who was trying to deliver laundry. Their taunts carried clearly on the winter air. "Hey, Celestial, them sheets don't look clean enough to me?" one miner jeered, knocking the carefully folded bundle from the young man's arms. "Maybe we oughta show him how to wash proper," another suggested with malicious glee, reaching for a water trough. Olivia was about to intervene foolishly, perhaps when a commanding voice cut through the scene. "That's enough." The miners turned, their expressions shifting from amusement to wariness as Adam Jameson approached, his hand resting casually near his holstered pistol. Olivia hadn't noticed him before, but now she couldn't look away. He moved with the same quiet confidence she remembered, his face impassive as he surveyed the scene. "Ain't no concern of yours, Jameson," the largest miner muttered, though he took a step back. "Lynn does my laundry too," Adam replied evenly, "and I prefer he doesn't get damaged before he finishes it." He addressed the young Chinese man directly. "You all right, Lynn?" The man nodded quickly, scrambling to collect his scattered laundry. "Yes, Mr. Jameson. Thank you. We was just having a bit of fun," one of the miners protested. Adam's gaze hardened. "Find it elsewhere. Now." Something in his tone, a deadly certainty, perhaps made the miners back down. They shuffled away, muttering under their breath but offering no further resistance. Adam helped Lynn gather the remaining laundry, then pressed a coin into his hand before turning away. It was then that he noticed Olivia standing frozen on the boardwalk, watching the entire exchange. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither spoke. "Miss Barton," he finally acknowledged with a slight nod. "I see you've settled in." "Mr. Jameson," she replied, stepping closer. "That was a kind thing you did just now." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Practical, not kind. Lynn's the only one who gets my shirts right." Olivia didn't believe his dismissal for a moment. "How have you been? I've thought about you often since." She trailed off, suddenly aware of how forward that sounded. "Since I found you freezing in my barn?" he finished, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "I've been as I always am, working the ranch, keeping to myself." "Would you walk with me a moment?" Olivia asked impulsively. "I'd like to thank you properly for your help that night." Adam glanced around the street, noting the curious glances already being directed their way. "Not sure that's wise. Town's got a healthy appetite for gossip, and you've got a reputation to consider." "Just to the edge of town," she persisted. "I won't keep you long." After a moment's hesitation, Adam nodded and fell into step beside her. They walked in silence until the buildings began to thin and the view opened up to the stark winter landscape beyond. "Mrs. Henderson treating you fair?" Adam asked finally. "Yes, she's been very kind. The work is harder than teaching, but I'm grateful for it." Olivia glanced sideways at him. "I heard what they call you in town." Adam's expression didn't change. "Did you now? Is it true? What they say about the Crawford gang?" He stopped walking, turning to face her directly. "Yes, every word. I killed 5 men that day and 3 more in the weeks that followed." "Does that satisfy your curiosity, Miss Barton?" The harshness of his words didn't match the pain she glimpsed in his eyes. "Why?" she asked simply. "They murdered my brother and his wife," Adam replied after a long pause. left their bodies for the coyotes and took everything they owned. Law wasn't interested in Justice Crawford had too many friends. So I handled it myself. Olivia absorbed this in silence, her heart aching for the loss that had clearly shaped him. I'm sorry about your brother. Long time ago now. Is that why you live alone? Keep to yourself. Adam's gaze hardened. I keep to myself because people are generally more trouble than they're worth. No offense intended. None taken, Olivia replied, though his words stung. I wanted you to know that I don't believe you're what they say. The Widowmaker. You showed me kindness when I needed it most. Don't mistake necessity for kindness, Miss Barton. I couldn't let you freeze to death on my property bad for business. Despite his harsh words, something in his expression had softened. All the same, I'm grateful, Olivia insisted. And I hope, perhaps we might be friends. Adam looked genuinely startled by the suggestion. Friends? Miss Barton, I'm not sure you understand how things work out here. People like you don't befriend people like me. People like me? You mean Easterners. I mean respectable women with prospects ahead of them, he corrected. Look, you're new here. You've got a decent position, and folks are starting to accept you. Don't jeopardize that by associating with me. Shouldn't that be my decision? Olivia challenged, surprising herself with her boldness. Adam studied her with those penetrating gray eyes. You're either braver or more foolish than I thought, he said finally. But I admire your spirit. He tipped his hat. Good day, Miss Barton. I wish you well in Pioche. He turned to leave, but Olivia called after him. Will you be in town again soon? Adam paused. Got cattle to sell next month. Might be in town for a day or two. Then perhaps I'll see you, she said, trying to sound casual though her heart was racing inexplicably. A half-smile touched his scarred face. Perhaps. With that, he strode away, his tall figure soon disappearing around a bend in the road. Olivia stood watching the empty road long after he had gone, wondering at the strange connection she felt to this solitary, complex man. Despite his gruff exterior and fearsome reputation, something about Adam Jameson called to her, making her want to discover the man behind the legend. It was foolish, perhaps even dangerous, but as she turned back toward town, Olivia knew with certainty that she would seek him out again. February brought a brief thaw and then another brutal cold snap that sent temperatures plummeting across Nevada. The hotel filled with stranded travelers and miners seeking refuge from the freezing temperatures in their ramshackle cabins, keeping Olivia busier than ever. Despite her exhaustion, she found herself watching for Adam whenever she had reason to venture onto the main street, hoping to glimpse his tall figure among the townspeople. Her opportunity came unexpectedly one evening in late February. Mrs. Henderson, satisfied with Olivia's work ethic, had assigned her to serve in the hotel dining room, a step up from cleaning rooms, with the potential for better tips. Olivia was clearing a table when the door opened, bringing a blast of cold air and the unmistakable figure of Adam Jameson. He was accompanied by another man older, with a weather-beaten face and the confident bearing of a rancher. They stamped snow from their boots and removed their hats, scanning the room for an empty table. Olivia's heart quickened as Adam's gaze fell on her, recognition and something else flashing in his eyes. She approached them with more composure than she felt. Good evening, gentlemen. Would you care for a table? Miss Barton, Adam acknowledged with a nod. This is Frank Cooper, owns the Flying Sea Ranch neighboring mine. Frank, this is Miss Olivia Barton. Pleasure, madam, Cooper said, studying her with open curiosity. So you're the schoolteacher who got stranded. Adam mentioned he'd helped someone out during that December cold snap. Mr. Jameson's kindness was most appreciated, Olivia replied, acutely aware of Adam's discomfort at the praise. Please, follow me. She led them to a corner table, relatively private compared to the others. "The stew is particularly good tonight," she told them, handing over the simple menu cards. "And there's fresh bread." "Sounds perfect," Cooper declared. "And coffee, strong as you can make it." "The same," Adam agreed, his eyes meeting hers briefly. As Olivia turned to place their order, she overheard Cooper's low comment, "Pretty little thing. No wonder you remembered her." Adam's reply was too quiet to catch, but something about his tone made her cheeks flush as she hurried to the kitchen. Throughout their meal, Olivia was acutely aware of Adam's presence, though she maintained a professional demeanor as she served them and the other diners. She noticed that several patrons gave Adam's table a wide berth, and whispered conversations followed in his wake. Yet Adam himself seemed impervious to the attention, focusing on his discussion with Cooper about cattle prices and spring breeding plans. As the dining room emptied for the evening, Olivia approached their table with coffee refills. Cooper excused himself to visit the necessary, leaving her momentarily alone with Adam. "You look well," he said unexpectedly. "Hotel work agrees with you." "Thank you. It's not what I envisioned, but it's honest work." Olivia hesitated, then added, "Mrs. Sullivan at the Mercantile also allows me to help with her accounts on Sundays. She said you recommended me." Adam looked slightly embarrassed at being caught in an act of kindness. "Mentioned you could cipher and write well is all." She needed the help. "All the same, I'm grateful." Olivia glanced around to ensure they weren't overheard. "Will you be in town long?" "Just tonight. Got business at the bank tomorrow, then heading back to the ranch. Weather's breaking soon, lot of work to be done before spring calving." Olivia nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. "Of course, I understand." Adam studied her face with those perceptive eyes. "You're fitting in here better than I expected. Town's accepting you." "Most people have been kind," she acknowledged, "though I sometimes feel like an outsider still. Not quite Eastern anymore, but not truly Western either." "Takes time," Adam said with unexpected gentleness. "Took me years to feel like Nevada was home after Pennsylvania." "You're from Pennsylvania originally?" Olivia asked, surprised by this personal revelation. Adam nodded. "Coal country. Father was a miner. Came west with my brother after the war, looking for something different." A shadow crossed his face at the mention of his brother. "I'm sorry," Olivia said softly, understanding the pain behind his words. "It must be difficult being alone." "Got used to it," Adam replied, though something in his tone suggested otherwise. "Better than the alternative sometimes." Before Olivia could respond, Cooper returned, effectively ending their private conversation. She finished her serving duties and was clearing the last tables when Adam and Cooper rose to leave. Cooper headed upstairs to his room, but Adam lingered, approaching her as she stacked dirty plates. "I'll be heading out at first light tomorrow," he said. "Probably won't be back in town for a while. Spring's a busy time on the ranch." "I understand," Olivia replied, wondering why he was telling her this. Adam seemed to struggle with his next words. "If you ever need anything help or just to get away from town for a day, my ranch is open to you. It's not much, but—" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable with his own offer. Warmth spread through Olivia's chest at this unexpected gesture. "Thank you, Adam. That means more than you know." He nodded once, then, with surprising formality, extended his hand. Olivia set down her stack of plates and placed her hand in his. His palm was rough with calluses, his grip gentle but firm, and the brief contact sent an unexpected shiver through her. "Good night, Olivia," he said, using her given name for the first time. Before she could recover from the surprise, he had turned and walked away, disappearing up the stairs to his room. Olivia stood motionless, her hands still tingling from his touch, her mind replaying the sound of her name on his lips. It was foolishness, she knew, this growing attraction to a man so different from anyone she had known before, a man with a violent past and a solitary present. Yet she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward Adam Jameson, a pull that seemed to strengthen each time they met. As March arrived, bringing the first tentative signs of spring to the Nevada landscape, Olivia found herself thinking of Adam's ranch with increasing frequency. The hotel work had become routine, and while she was grateful for the security it provided, a part of her longed for something more, teaching perhaps, or at least work that used her mind as well as her hands. Mrs. Sullivan's bookkeeping offered some intellectual stimulation, but it was limited to Sunday afternoons. One such Sunday, as Olivia finished the weekly accounts, the widow approached her with an unusual request. "Miss Barton, I wonder if you might do me a service. I need to send some supplies out to the Jameson ranch, but my delivery boy is down with influenza." Olivia's heart quickened at the mention of Adam's name. "You want me to deliver supplies to Mr. Jameson's ranch?" "If you're willing," Mrs. Sullivan confirmed. "I can offer you $1 for your trouble and the use of my buckboard. It's not a difficult drive when the weather's clear, and it is certainly finer than when you arrived in December." The opportunity to see Adam again and to see his ranch in daylight was too tempting to resist. "I'd be happy to help," Olivia agreed, trying to sound casual. "When would you need me to go?" "Tomorrow, if you can arrange it with Mrs. Henderson. I understand you normally work at the hotel on Mondays." "Yes, but she gives me Monday mornings off occasionally." "I'm sure she would this once, especially if I explain I'm doing a service for you." The two older women shared membership in the Church Ladies' Auxiliary and held each other in high regard. Mrs. Sullivan nodded approvingly. "Excellent. Come by at 8 tomorrow morning, and I'll have everything ready." The next day dawned clear and mild, with a gentle breeze carrying the promise of spring. Mrs. Henderson had indeed granted Olivia the morning off, though not without a knowing look that suggested she understood there was more to the errand than simple delivery service. "Just be back by 2, she instructed. "And mind you remember you're a lady, regardless of who you're visiting." "Mrs. Henderson," Olivia protested, blushing. "It's merely a delivery." The older woman raised her eyebrows but said nothing more as Olivia hurried away to the mercantile. Mrs. Sullivan had the buckboard loaded with supply sacks of flour and sugar, coffee beans, ammunition, and various other necessities. She provided clear directions to the Jameson ranch and a sealed envelope containing Adam's bill of sale. "He's a good customer," Mrs. Sullivan remarked as Olivia climbed onto the seat. "Always pays promptly, never haggles. Not like some I could mention." She adjusted Olivia's shawl with motherly concern. "Be back before dark, mind. Road's clear enough now, but you don't want to be out there alone come nightfall." The journey to Adam's ranch seemed much shorter in daylight and fair weather than it had during that desperate night in December. Olivia enjoyed the drive, taking in the stark beauty of the Nevada landscape, the distant mountains still capped with snow, the sagebrush dotting the valley, and the clear blue sky stretching endlessly overhead. She recognized the ranch as she approached the weathered barn where she had sought shelter, the modest cabin with smoke curling from its chimney, and several outbuildings scattered across the property. A corral held several horses, and in the distance, she could see cattle grazing in a fenced pasture. As she guided the buckboard into the yard, a dog began barking, and moments later, Adam emerged from the barn. He froze when he saw her, then strode forward with long steps, his expression a mixture of surprise and concern. "Olivia, is something wrong?" She smiled, oddly touched that his first thought was for her welfare. "Nothing's wrong. Mrs. Sullivan asked me to deliver your supplies. Her delivery boy is ill." Relief replaced concern on his face. "I see." He approached the wagon, his eyes taking in her appearance, the simple blue dress she'd worn for the occasion, her hair neatly pinned beneath a modest bonnet. "You look, well, as do you," she replied, noticing the changes in him since their last meeting. He appeared more at ease here on his own property, less guarded somehow, though no less imposing. His dark hair was damp, as if he'd recently washed, and he'd shaved, the scar on his cheek standing out starkly against his clean-shaven face. Adam helped her down from the wagon, his hands strong and sure at her waist. The brief contact sent that now familiar warmth through her body, and Olivia struggled to maintain her composure as her feet touched the ground. "Thank you," she murmured, stepping back slightly. "I have your bill of sale here." She handed him the envelope from Mrs. Sullivan. Adam took it, his eyes never leaving her face. "You came all this way just to deliver supplies?" "Mrs. Sullivan offered $1, Olivia explained, "and I was curious to see your ranch properly in daylight. Last time, well, circumstances were different." A hint of a smile touched his lips. Indeed they were. He glanced at the loaded wagon. "This will take some time to unload. Would you care for coffee while you wait?" "I'd like that very much," Olivia replied, following him toward the cabin. Inside, the main room looked much as she remembered it, sparse but clean, with the same practical furnishings. In daylight, however, she noticed details she had missed before. Bookshelves filled with more volumes than she had initially realized, a few carefully preserved photographs on the mantel, and surprisingly fine curtains at the windows. "Your home is lovely," she commented, moving to examine the bookshelves while Adam busied himself with the coffee pot. "You have quite a collection of books." "My brothers mostly," Adam replied, his back to her as he worked. He was the educated one. Went to college back east before the war. Olivia ran her fingers along the spines, noting classics of literature alongside practical manuals on ranching and animal husbandry. "You've read these?" "Most of them. Winter nights are long out here." He brought 2 cups of coffee to the table. Not much else to do when snows piled to the windowsills. They sat across from each other, and Olivia wrapped her hands around the warm cup, suddenly unsure what to say now that she was here. Adam seemed equally at a loss, studying her with those penetrating gray eyes. "How are you finding Pioche?" he finally asked. "Still planning to stay?" "I'm settled for now," Olivia replied, "though I miss teaching. Children especially." She took a sip of coffee, gathering her courage. "Actually, I've been thinking of starting a small school myself once I've saved enough. There are children in town whose parents can't afford to send them to the regular school, or who work in the mines despite their age. They deserve an education too." Adam's expression softened with what might have been admiration. "That's ambitious. And kind." "Not kind," Olivia echoed his words from their earlier meeting with a small smile. "Practical. Education changes lives." "So it does." Adam hesitated, then asked, "What brought you west, truly? You mentioned your parents passing, but there's more, isn't there?" The directness of the question startled her, but Olivia found herself wanting to confide in him. "There was a man," she admitted, "a colleague at the school where I taught. We were engaged to be married." Adam's expression revealed nothing. "What happened?" "I discovered he was already married," Olivia said simply. "He had a wife and child in another town. He'd been living a double life for years." "I'm sorry," Adam said, and she could tell he meant it. "It was humiliating," Olivia continued, the words coming easier now. "Everyone knew. The school board was sympathetic but concerned about scandal. When I saw the advertisement for a teaching position in Nevada, it seemed like Providence, a fresh start, far away from the whispers and pitying looks, only to arrive and find the position filled," Adam remarked. "Fate has a cruel sense of humor sometimes." "Perhaps," Olivia acknowledged. But had the position been available, I would never have sought shelter in your barn that night. Never met you. The admission hung in the air between them, more revealing than she had intended. Adam's eyes darkened, and he set down his cup carefully. Olivia, a sharp knock at the door interrupted whatever he had been about to say. Frowning, Adam rose and opened it to reveal a weather-beaten cowhand in his 40s. Sorry to interrupt, boss, but we've got trouble at the north pasture. Fence is down, and some of the pregnant heifers are wandering. Adam's expression immediately shifted to concern. How many got out? At least a dozen. Jenkins is trying to keep them from heading into the hills, but he needs help. I'll saddle up. Adam turned back to Olivia with regret clear in his eyes. I'm sorry, but I need to handle this. Of course, Olivia said, rising quickly. I should return to town anyway. Mrs. Henderson expects me back by 2. The supplies Adam began. Leave them, the cowhand offered. I'll unload the wagon before I head back out, Mr. Jameson. Thank you, Peterson. Adam grabbed his coat and hat, then turned to Olivia. I'm sorry our visit was cut short. It's all right. Your ranch needs you. Olivia gathered her shawl, trying to hide her disappointment. Thank you for the coffee. Adam walked her to the buckboard, helping her up onto the seat with those same strong hands. For a moment, he kept hold of her hand, looking up at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Come again, he said quietly. If you want to. Sundays are usually quiet. Joy flared in Olivia's chest at the invitation. I'd like that. Adam nodded once, then released her hand. Safe journey back to town. As Olivia drove away, she glanced back to see him mounting a chestnut horse, his figure straight and strong in the saddle. He raised a hand in farewell before turning the horse toward the north pasture, spurring it into a gallop. The road back to Pioche seemed even shorter, Olivia's mind filled with the brief moments of connection she had shared with Adam. Despite the interrupted visit, she felt a growing certainty that whatever was developing between them was mutual and real. His invitation to return had been genuine, and she intended to accept it as soon as circumstances allowed. What she hadn't counted on was the speed at which gossip traveled in a small mining town. When she returned the buckboard to Mrs. Sullivan and reported the successful delivery, the older woman's knowing smile suggested she had guessed at Olivia's interest in Adam. By evening, whispers were circulating through the hotel dining room, and Mrs. Henderson called Olivia into her office after the dinner service. Miss Barton, she began with uncharacteristic hesitation. I hold you in high regard, and I speak now out of concern for your welfare and reputation. Olivia's heart sank, knowing what was coming. Mrs. Henderson, please, let me finish. The older woman's expression was grave. There is talk about your visit to the Jameson ranch today. Uncharitable talk. I know you went at Mrs. Sullivan's request, but people in this town have long memories and active imaginations. I delivered supplies, nothing more, Olivia protested. I believe you, Mrs. Henderson assured her. But Adam Jameson has a dark history in this town. There are those who fear him, others who resent him, and many who believe he belongs behind bars for what he did to the Crawford gang, justified or not. She sighed heavily. A respectable woman seen keeping company with such a man invites speculation and worse. I find that terribly unfair, Olivia said, struggling to keep her tone respectful. Mr. Jameson showed me kindness when I needed it most. He is a hard-working rancher who keeps to himself. What happened with the Crawford gang was years ago, and from what I understand, they murdered his family. His brother and sister-in-law, Mrs. Henderson corrected. And yes, it was a terrible tragedy, but the manner of his revenge. 5 men shot dead in broad daylight on Main Street, and 3 more hunted down in the weeks that followed. It shocked this town to its core. She leaned forward earnestly. I'm not saying he didn't have cause, Olivia. I'm saying there are consequences to associating with a man who took justice into his own hands so violently. Olivia remained silent, torn between defiance and the practical reality of her situation. She needed her position at the hotel, needed the community's acceptance if she were ever to establish her school for the poorer children. Mrs. Henderson's expression softened. I'm not forbidding you from seeing him, my dear. I have no right to dictate your personal affairs. I'm simply asking you to be discreet and to consider carefully what you might be sacrificing. Pioche is not Boston. Reputations here, once damaged, are not easily repaired. I understand, Olivia said quietly. Thank you for your concern, Mrs. Henderson. As she left the office and returned to her small room, Olivia's mind churned with conflicting emotions. Mrs. Henderson's warning had been kindly meant, but it rankled nonetheless. The idea that she should shun Adam because of town gossip seemed profoundly unfair, yet she couldn't dismiss the practical concerns entirely. That night, as she prepared for bed, Olivia made a decision. She would not abandon her growing friendship with Adam Jameson out of fear of gossip, but neither would she flaunt it before the town. She would find a way to navigate between the life she was building in Pioche and the inexplicable connection she felt to the solitary rancher with the troubled past and gentle hands. April brought warmer weather and increased activity to Pioche as mining operations ramped up after the winter slowdown. For Olivia, it brought both opportunities and challenges. Mrs. Henderson, impressed with her work in the dining room, promoted her to assistant manager of the hotel, which meant better pay and more responsibility. The widow Sullivan, equally pleased with Olivia's bookkeeping skills, offered her additional hours on Wednesday afternoons. These developments, while welcome financially, left Olivia with less free time than before. Still, she managed to visit Adam's ranch on 2 Sundays, each visit strengthening the bond between them. They shared coffee and conversation in his cabin, discussing books they had both read, exchanging stories of their lives before Nevada, and gradually revealing more of themselves to each other. Adam, she discovered, was not naturally taciturn. He simply measured his words carefully, speaking when he had something meaningful to say. His intelligence surprised her. At first he had read and understood works that many college-educated men she'd known had struggled with. When she remarked on this, he explained that his brother Thomas had insisted on educating him during the long winters of their youth. Said just because I worked with my hands didn't mean my mind should go fallow, Adam recalled with a rare smile. Made me read everything from Shakespeare to geological surveys. Said knowledge never weighs you down on the trail. In turn, Olivia shared more about her life in Boston, her teaching career, and her dream of opening a school for Pioche's less fortunate children. Adam listened attentively, offering practical suggestions about potential locations and how to approach the town council. During her second visit, he showed her around the ranch, the expanded herd of cattle grazing in the spring green pastures, the vegetata garden he was preparing for planting, and the small orchard of apple trees his brother had started years before. He introduced her to Peterson and Jenkins, the 2 hands who helped with the cattle, both of whom regarded her with undisguised curiosity but treated her with respectful courtesy. What remained unspoken between them was the growing attraction that made every accidental touch significant and charged the air when their eyes met. Adam maintained a careful distance, never presuming, always the gentleman despite his rough exterior. But Olivia felt the tension building, saw the heat in his eyes when he thought she wasn't looking, and recognized it because it mirrored her own feelings. On her third visit in late April, everything changed. Olivia arrived to find Adam alone at the ranch, his hands having gone to town for supplies. They shared the now customary coffee, but a storm was building to the west, dark clouds gathering ominously over the mountains. You should head back before that hits, Adam said, eyeing the sky with concern. Spring storms can be unpredictable. Surely I have time for a short visit, Olivia protested, reluctant to leave so soon. Adam's expression softened. I'm glad for your company, Olivia, but I'd never forgive myself if you got caught in that on my account. They moved outside, and Adam was helping Olivia into the buckboard when the first fat raindrops began to fall. Within seconds, the gentle rain transformed into a downpour, accompanied by gusting wind. Too late! Adam shouted over the sudden roar of the storm. Come back inside. They made a dash for the cabin, but even the short distance left them soaked. Inside, Adam quickly built up the fire while Olivia stood dripping on the rug, her dress plastered to her body and her hair coming loose from its pins. You're shivering, Adam observed with concern. You need dry clothes. He disappeared into the bedroom, returning with a flannel shirt and woolen trousers. These are old ones of mine. Too small for me now, but still too big for you. Better than wet clothes, though. Olivia hesitated, acutely aware of the impropriety, but practical necessity won out. Thank you. Where should I? Bedroom, Adam said, gesturing toward the door. I'll wait here. In the privacy of Adam's bedroom, a space as spare and functional as the rest of the cabin, dominated by a large bed with a handmade quilt. Olivia changed quickly. The clothes were indeed too large, but the flannel shirt was soft against her skin, and the trousers, secured with a belt, would serve until her dress dried. She used a comb she found on the dresser to restore order to her damp hair, then returned to the main room. Adam had his back to her, stoking the fire, but he turned at her entrance. His eyes widened slightly as they took in her appearance, and something in his expression made Olivia's pulse quicken. Better? She asked, suddenly shy under his scrutiny. Yes, he said, his voice rougher than usual. He cleared his throat. The storm's settled in. Might be a while before it passes. They stood awkwardly for a moment, the patter of rain on the roof and the crackling fire the only sounds. Then Adam gestured to the chair nearest the fire. Sit. Get warm. I'll make more coffee. But as Olivia moved toward the chair, her foot caught on the too long trouser leg, and she stumbled. Adam was beside her instantly, strong hands steadying her before she could fall. For a heartbeat, they remained frozen, his hands at her waist, her palms against his chest, faces inches apart. Olivia, Adam breathed, his eyes darkening with unmistakable desire. Something broke between them in that moment, the careful restraint, the unspoken boundaries. Olivia wasn't sure who moved first, but suddenly his lips were on hers, and her arms were around his neck, and the world narrowed to this single perfect point of connection. The kiss deepened, years of Adam's solitude and Olivia's caution melting away in the heat they generated together. His hands tightened at her waist, drawing her closer, while hers threaded into his dark hair. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily, eyes wide with the shock of what had happened and the recognition of how right it felt. I shouldn't have done that, Adam said, though he made no move to release her. Why not? Olivia challenged, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. You know why. Who I am. What I've done. His expression turned pained. You deserve better, Olivia. Shouldn't I be the judge of what I deserve? She touched his face gently, tracing the scar on his cheek. I know who you are, Adam. Not just what you've done, but who you are. A good man who's known terrible grief. A man who took me in when I was freezing and has shown me nothing but respect since. The town will never accept it, Adam warned. You'll lose everything you've built there. Perhaps. Olivia smiled softly. Or perhaps they'll eventually see what I see. Adam's arms tightened around her, his expression a mixture of wonder and disbelief. What is it you see, Olivia Barton? A man worth knowing, worth loving. The word hung between them, breathtaking in its implications. Adam's eyes widened, and for a moment, Olivia feared she had gone too far, too fast. Then his face softened, and he lowered his forehead to rest against hers. "I never thought to hear those words again," he murmured. "Never thought to want to." They stood in each other's arms as the storm raged outside, the moment stretching into something timeless and profound. When they kissed again, it was with a tenderness that brought tears to Olivia's eyes. Later, they sat before the fire, Olivia curled against Adam's side, his arm around her shoulders. They spoke in low voices about what might come next, the challenges they would face, the sacrifices that might be necessary. Nothing was resolved completely, but a path forward began to emerge, cautious steps that would allow their relationship to develop while respecting the realities of their situation. "I won't ask you to choose between me and the life you're building in town," Adam said firmly. "Your school, your work, they matter. They're part of who you are. And I won't ask you to change who you are," Olivia replied. "Your past is part of you, Adam. I accept that." The storm began to ease as afternoon faded into evening. Olivia's dress had dried by the fire, and she changed back into it, regretfully returning Adam's clothes. The ride back to town would be muddy but manageable. As they stood at the door, reluctant to part, Adam took her hands in his. "I'm riding into Pioche in 2 days to see about selling some yearlings. May I call on you properly?" Olivia smiled at the formal request. "Yes, I'd like that very much." He kissed her once more softly, before helping her into the buckboard. As she drove away, Olivia felt as though something fundamental had shifted in her world. The path ahead might not be easy, but with Adam beside her, she felt ready to face whatever came. True to his word, Adam rode into Pioche 2 days later. He had clearly made an effort with his appearance. His clothes were clean and pressed, his dark hair neatly combed, his usually stubbled jaw clean-shaven. He presented himself at the hotel front desk and formally asked to see Miss Barton, much to the surprise of the desk clerk. Word spread quickly through the hotel, and by the time Olivia came downstairs, several curious onlookers had gathered in the lobby. She felt their stares but focused solely on Adam, who stood tall and proud despite the whispers. "Mr. Jameson," she greeted him with deliberate formality, though her eyes conveyed much more. "This is a pleasant surprise." "Miss Barton," he replied, his voice steady. "I wondered if you might accompany me for a walk this afternoon? The weather has improved considerably." "I would be delighted." Olivia turned to Mrs. Henderson, who had emerged from her office with an expression of barely concealed concern. "If I may be excused for an hour, Mrs. Henderson?" The older woman looked between them, noting Adam's respectful demeanor and Olivia's quiet determination. After a moment, she nodded. "1 hour, Miss Barton. We have guests arriving on the afternoon stage." "Thank you." Olivia fetched her shawl and bonnet, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed them as they left the hotel. Once outside, Adam offered his arm, a gesture so unexpectedly formal that Olivia had to suppress a smile as she placed her hand in the crook of his elbow. They walked in silence until they reached the edge of town, where fewer eyes followed their progress. "That caused quite a stir," Olivia remarked, finally allowing her smile to emerge. "As expected." Adam's expression remained serious. "Are you prepared for what may follow? The talk will only increase." "I've faced gossip before," Olivia reminded him. "In Boston. It's unpleasant but survivable." They continued their walk, discussing Adam's cattle business and Olivia's progress in saving for her school. To any observer, they might have appeared to be conducting a perfectly ordinary, respectable conversation. But the current flowing beneath their words, the shared memory of their kisses by the fire, the future they had begun to envision together, gave every word additional meaning. When they returned to the hotel, Adam bowed formally over her hand. "Thank you for the pleasure of your company, Miss Barton." "The pleasure was mine, Mr. Jameson," Olivia replied, matching his formality while her eyes conveyed much more. As expected, Mrs. Henderson called Olivia into her office that evening. But rather than the lecture Olivia anticipated, the older woman surprised her with a measured assessment of the situation. "Adam Jameson's reputation in this town is complicated," she said. "What he did to the Crawford gang shocked everyone. But many also remember that before that day, he was considered an honorable man. His brother and sister-in-law were well loved here." "I didn't know that," Olivia admitted. "Thomas Jameson was a teacher like you," Mrs. Henderson continued. "He taught at the school for several years while building up the ranch with Adam. His wife, Sarah, played organ at the church. Their murders were horrific. It broke something in this town, and in Adam." Olivia absorbed this new information, her heart aching for the additional layer of loss this represented. "Adam never mentioned his brother was a teacher. Perhaps it's too painful still." Mrs. Henderson sighed deeply. "I won't pretend a relationship with Adam Jameson will be easy, Olivia. Some people here will never forgive him for taking the law into his own hands, no matter the provocation. But others, well, time has a way of softening even the harshest judgments." "Are you saying you don't disapprove?" Olivia asked, surprised. "I'm saying I've lived long enough to know that judging another's heart is dangerous business." The older woman's expression softened. "Just be careful, my dear. Be very sure of your own heart before you proceed further." In the days that followed, Adam's occasional appearances in Pioche gradually became less of a sensation. He conducted his business efficiently, called formally on Olivia when her duties allowed, and began to reintegrate himself into town life in small, careful ways. He attended Sunday services at the Methodist Church, sitting quietly in the back pew. He donated generously when the Ladies' Aid Society held a fundraiser for new hymnals. And most significantly, he spoke with the town council about the possibility of establishing a school for the poorer children of Pioche. This last action, taken without Olivia's knowledge, came to light when Councilman Edwards approached her after church one Sunday in May. "Miss Barton," he said, "I understand you have an interest in education for our less fortunate children." Surprised, Olivia nodded. "Yes, indeed. I believe every child deserves the opportunity to learn, regardless of circumstances. Adam Jameson seems to share your conviction," Edwards continued. "He's offered to donate land at the edge of town for such a school, and to contribute toward building costs." The councilman studied her reaction carefully. "He mentioned you might be willing to serve as the teacher." Olivia struggled to mask her shock. "He discussed this with the council yesterday afternoon. Most unexpected, I must say. Jameson hasn't involved himself in town affairs since." Edwards cleared his throat awkwardly. "Well, in some years, but his proposal has merit. The council will consider it at our next meeting." As the councilman moved away, Olivia stood frozen, emotions swirling through her surprise, joy, and a touch of confusion that Adam had taken such a step without discussing it with her first. When she confronted him later that day during his customary Sunday call, his expression turned sheepish. "I should have spoken to you first," he acknowledged. "But I wanted to be sure the council would consider it before getting your hopes up." "It's not that," Olivia said, still trying to process the magnitude of his gesture. "Adam, that land must be valuable. And the building costs, I have more than enough," he interrupted gently. "Thomas and Sarah would have wanted this, especially knowing you would be the teacher." Tears pricked Olivia's eyes. "This means everything to me, but I don't want you to think you need to buy my affection." Adam's expression turned serious. "That's not what this is, Olivia. Your dream matters to me because you matter to me. Because I... He hesitated, then continued softly, because I love you. The words, spoken for the first time, hung in the air between them. Olivia's heart seemed to stop, then race forward with renewed purpose. I love you too, Adam, she whispered, reaching for his hands. I think I have since you found me in that barn. He drew her closer, heedless of who might see them standing together on the hotel's small side porch. I never thought to find someone like you, he murmured. Never thought I deserved to. You deserve happiness, Adam Jameson, Olivia said firmly. We both do. The town council approved the school proposal the following week, with construction to begin in June. The news spread quickly through Pioche, along with the understanding that Adam Jameson was courting Miss Barton openly and honorably. Opinions were divided. Some welcomed Adam's apparent redemption, while others muttered darkly about Olivia's judgment in associating with a known killer. Mrs. Henderson, to Olivia's relief, remained supportive. Change comes slowly to small towns, she counseled. But it does come. Give people time. By June, the foundations for the new school were laid on the plot of land Adam had donated at the eastern edge of town. Olivia visited the construction site daily, her excitement growing as walls began to rise and the humble building took shape. Adam often joined her there, discussing plans for desks, books, and other necessities. Their courtship progressed with proper decorum in public chaperoned walks, Sunday afternoon drives, and occasional dinners at the hotel restaurant. In private moments, stolen at the construction site or during Olivia's visits to the ranch, their connection deepened. Adam revealed more of his past, the horror of finding his brother and sister-in-law murdered, the grief that had hardened into cold fury, the emptiness that had followed his revenge. I was dead inside for years, he confessed one afternoon as they sat on the porch of his ranch house. Didn't even realize it until you came along, half frozen and stubborn as hell. Olivia laughed softly at his description. Hardly a romantic first impression. Depends on your definition of romantic. Adam's gray eyes warmed with tenderness. You were the bravest woman I'd ever seen, determined to survive, refusing to complain even though you were freezing to death. How could I not admire that? As summer progressed, so did the school building and their relationship. By August, the school was nearly complete, a simple but sturdy structure with large windows to admit light, a small bell tower, and space for up to 30 students. Olivia had begun collecting books, slates, and other supplies, using both her own savings and donations from supportive townspeople. On a warm evening in late August, Adam invited Olivia to dinner at his ranch. She arrived to find the cabin transformed, the table set with a clean cloth and Adam's best dishes, wildflowers in a mason jar serving as a centerpiece, and the delicious aroma of roast beef filling the air. Did you cook this? Olivia asked in surprise as Adam held her chair. Peterson's wife helped, he admitted with a smile. I can manage over a campfire, but an oven requires a woman's touch, apparently. The meal was delicious, the conversation easy and comfortable as they discussed the upcoming school opening scheduled for September. As they finished the apple pie that served as dessert, Adam grew uncharacteristically nervous, fiddling with his coffee cup and avoiding her eyes. Adam, is everything all right? Olivia asked, concerned by his sudden change in demeanor. He took a deep breath, then met her gaze directly. Olivia, these past months have been. I never expected to find happiness again after Thomas and Sarah died. Never wanted to, but you changed everything. Olivia's heart began to race as she realized where this might be leading. Adam, he stood abruptly, then, to her astonishment, knelt beside her chair and took her hands in his. I'm not good with words like Thomas was, not educated like you, but I love you with everything I am, and I'm asking if you'll do me the honor of becoming my wife." Joy surged through Olivia, so powerful she felt lightheaded. "Yes," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. "Yes, Adam, I'll marry you." His face transformed with a smile of such pure happiness that Olivia's breath caught. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a small but perfect diamond. "It was my mother's," he explained as he slipped it onto her finger. "She made me promise to give it only to a woman worthy of it. There's never been anyone more worthy than you, Olivia." The ring fit perfectly, glinting in the lamplight. Olivia stared at it in wonder, then raised her eyes to Adam's face. "I love you," she said simply. He rose and pulled her gently to her feet, into his arms. The kiss they shared was tender at first, then deepened with the promise of all that lay ahead. When they finally drew apart, both were breathless. "When?" Adam asked. "When will you marry me?" "After the school opens," Olivia decided. "Once I've seen the children settled. October, perhaps." "October," Adam agreed, "though it feels like an eternity from now." Olivia laughed, joy bubbling through her. "Patience, Mr. Jameson. Good things come to those who wait." They announced their engagement the following Sunday after church services, facing the mixed reactions of the townspeople with united dignity. Some offered sincere congratulations, others barely concealed disapproval, but neither Olivia nor Adam allowed the opinions of others to dim their happiness. September brought the opening of the Pioche Free School, with 15 students enrolled, children of miners, laundry workers, and other working families who couldn't afford the town's regular school. Olivia threw herself into teaching with passionate dedication, while Adam divided his time between the ranch and assisting with the school's ongoing needs. By October, when their wedding day arrived, opinions in Pioche had begun to shift. Adam's continued support for the school, his respectful courtship of Olivia, and his quiet reintegration into community life had softened many hearts. The Methodist Church was nearly full for the ceremony, with Mrs. Henderson, Widow Sullivan, and even Sheriff Miller among those in attendance. Olivia wore a simple gown of ivory silk, with lace at the collar and cuffs, her one extravagance, ordered from San Francisco for the occasion. Adam, standing tall at the altar in a new black suit, watched her approach with an expression of such naked adoration that whispers of approval rippled through the congregation. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, their vows spoken in clear, confident voices that carried to the farthest pews. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, and Adam kissed his bride with tender restraint, applause broke out spontaneously, led by Mrs. Henderson herself. The reception, held at the Silver Palace Hotel, was a joyous affair that stretched into the evening. Even those who had initially disapproved found themselves caught up in the celebration, won over by the evident love between the newlyweds and the transformation it had wrought in the once solitary rancher. Later that night, as they drove back to the ranch, now their shared home, Olivia rested her head on Adam's shoulder, a profound contentment filling her. "Happy, Mrs. Jameson?" Adam asked, his arms secure around her waist. "Completely, Mr. Jameson," she replied, the new name still a wonder on her lips. "Though I can hardly believe how much has changed since that night you found me freezing in your barn." Adam's arm tightened around her. "Best night of my life, though I didn't know it then. And now." He turned to her, his face softened by moonlight, love clear in his eyes. "Now I know that everything I ever needed, everything I thought I'd lost forever, hope, purpose, love, was just waiting to be found in you." As autumn faded into winter, the Jameson Ranch became a place transformed. The cabin, once Spartan and functional, grew warmer and more inviting, with Olivia's touch curtains at all the windows, cushions on the chairs, and bookshelves filled with volumes for both teaching and pleasure. Adam built additional rooms onto the structure, working through the mild days of late fall to create a proper home for his new wife and the family they hoped to have. Olivia continued teaching at the free school, driving into town each morning and returning to the ranch in the afternoons. On stormy days, Adam insisted on driving her himself, unwilling to risk her safety on the sometimes treacherous road. Their evenings were spent in comfortable companionship, reading before the fire, discussing the day's events, or simply enjoying the miracle of no longer being alone. The harsh winter of 1876-77 arrived with a vengeance in December, bringing snowstorms that isolated the ranch for days at a time. During one such storm, almost exactly a year after their first meeting, Adam found Olivia standing at the window, watching the snow pile against the barn where he had discovered her. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, coming to stand behind her, his arms encircling her waist. Olivia leaned back against his solid warmth. "I was thinking about how different my life is now compared to a year ago, how close I came to freezing to death in that barn." She turned in his arms to face him. "How fortunate I am that you found me." "I believe I'm the fortunate one," Adam replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His expression grew serious. "There's something I want to show you." He led her to the small study they had created from one of the new rooms, where a desk held the ranch's accounts and correspondence. From a drawer, Adam withdrew a small leather-bound book and handed it to her. "What is this?" Olivia asked, opening the cover to find pages filled with neat handwriting. "Thomas's journal," Adam explained softly. "I've never shown it to anyone before, but I think you should read it, especially today." Curious, Olivia settled into the chair by the desk and began to read. The journal contained Thomas Jameson's thoughts on teaching, ranching, and family life, written in an educated, thoughtful hand. As she turned the pages, she came to an entry dated December 15, 1873, almost exactly 3 years earlier. "Adam continues to withdraw from life," Thomas had written. "Since returning from the war, he has built walls around his heart that even Sarah and I struggle to penetrate. The nightmares plague him still. I fear he will never find peace, never allow himself to love or be loved again. My greatest wish for my brother is that he someday finds someone who can reach the good man I know still exists beneath the scars of war and loss." Tears filled Olivia's eyes as she looked up at Adam, who stood watching her with a vulnerable expression she rarely saw. "Your brother loved you very much," she said softly. "Yes," Adam agreed, his voice rough with emotion. "And he would have loved you too, would have been glad to know his wish came true." Olivia rose and went to him, wrapping her arms around his waist and resting her head against his chest. "Thank you for sharing this with me, for sharing all of yourself with me." Adam tilted her face up to his gray eyes warm with love. "You're my heart, Olivia, my life, everything I never thought I'd have again." As they kissed, the snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the land in pristine white. But inside the ranch house, once cold and lonely, warmth and love flourished, a testament to the healing power of second chances and the enduring strength of hearts brave enough to love again after loss. Spring arrived early in 1877, bringing with it new life and fresh beginnings. The free school had grown to 25 students, with Olivia's reputation as a dedicated and effective teacher spreading throughout the area. Adam's cattle business thrived, allowing him to hire additional hands and expand the ranch operations. And in April, Olivia shared joyous news with her husband. They were expecting their first child in November. Adam's reaction to the news was everything Olivia had hoped for. His hands trembled as he placed them gently on her still flat stomach, his eyes filled with wonder and a touch of fear. "A family," he whispered. "Our family. Are you happy?" Olivia asked, though his expression had already answered. "More than I can say." Adam gathered her carefully into his arms, as if she had suddenly become fragile. "I never thought, after everything, to be blessed this way." As her pregnancy progressed through the summer months, Olivia continued teaching, determined to complete the school year before her confinement. The town's attitude toward the Jamesons had continued to evolve, with more people acknowledging Adam's contributions to the community and treating him with growing respect. When news of the coming baby spread, even former critics sent gifts and well wishes. "Babies have a way of changing perspectives," Mrs. Henderson observed when she visited the ranch to deliver a handmade quilt for the nursery. "Nothing heals old wounds like new life." In September, as Olivia's time grew closer, she reluctantly stepped back from daily teaching duties, with a qualified replacement taking over temporarily. Adam transformed one of the new rooms into a nursery, crafting a cradle with his own hands and filling the shelves with children's books that Olivia selected. "Boy or girl, this child will love reading," she declared, arranging the books lovingly. "Just like their Uncle Thomas." Adam smiled at the mention of his brother. "Thomas would be proud of the school, of you, of everything we've built here." On a crisp November morning, with the first snow dusting the distant mountains, Olivia went into labor. The town's midwife had been engaged weeks earlier and arrived promptly when Adam sent Peterson galloping for her. What followed were 18 hours of the most exquisite pain and ultimately the most profound joy Olivia had ever experienced. Shortly after midnight, their son was born, a robust boy with a shock of dark hair like his father's, and, when he briefly opened them, eyes that promised to be as blue as his mother's. "Thomas," Olivia whispered when Adam was finally allowed to enter the room, their son cradled in her arms. "I'd like to name him Thomas, after your brother, if you agree." Adam, overwhelmed by the sight of his wife and newborn son, could only nod, tears streaming unashamedly down his face. When Olivia placed the tiny bundle in his arms, he stood frozen for a long moment, staring down at the miracle they had created together. "Hello, Thomas," he finally said, his voice rough with emotion. "Welcome to the world, son." Young Thomas Jameson thrived through that first winter, growing stronger each day under the devoted care of his parents. Olivia recovered quickly from the birth and resumed teaching part-time in January, bringing the baby with her to school several days a week. The students, especially the girls, were enchanted by the infant, and Olivia incorporated his presence into her lessons on responsibility and family. Adam proved to be a natural father, as gentle with his son as he was strong in all other aspects of life. In the evenings, he would cradle Thomas against his chest while reading aloud from the books his brother had loved, instilling a love of words from the earliest age. By spring, as Thomas approached 6 months, life on the Jameson ranch had settled into a new normal, busy, occasionally chaotic, but filled with a happiness that sometimes still took Olivia's breath away. The changes in Adam were remarkable. The once solitary, grim-faced rancher now smiled easily, engaged actively in community affairs, and spoke openly of his hopes for the future. "I never thought I'd see Adam Jameson dandling a baby on his knee," Sheriff Miller remarked during a Sunday visit. "Man's come full circle from the dark days after the Crawford business." "You did that, Olivia. Brought him back to life." "We did it together," Olivia corrected gently. "Adam was never truly the man people feared. He just needed someone to remind him of who he really was." As Thomas's first birthday approached, Olivia and Adam began planning a small celebration. The guest list included Mrs. Henderson, Widow Sullivan, the ranch hands and their families, and a few others who had become friends over the past 2 years. Adam rode into town to deliver the invitations personally, a task he now undertook without the wariness that had once characterized his visits to Pioche. While in town, he encountered an unexpected visitor at the sheriff's office, a U.S. Marshal named Harrington who had known Thomas and Sarah before their deaths. The two men recognized each other immediately, and after initial greetings, fell into conversation about the changes in Pioche and in Adam's life. "Married with a son, I hear," Harrington said with genuine pleasure. "Thomas would be proud, Adam. Real proud." "Thank you, Marshall," Adam replied. "My wife's planning a birthday celebration for our boy next week. You'd be welcome to attend, if you're still in town." Harrington accepted the invitation readily, and when he arrived at the ranch the following week, he brought not only a gift for young Thomas but news that would change the Jamesons' lives once more. After the cake had been cut and the guests had begun to mingle on the ranch's expanded porch, Harrington drew Adam and Olivia aside. "I've been tracking the remaining members of the Crawford gang for years," he explained quietly. "Last month, we captured the last one, a man named Reeves who was hiding in Colorado. Before he was hanged, he made a full confession about what happened here." Adam's body tensed, and Olivia slipped her hand into his, offering silent support. "The confession changes things," Harrington continued. "Confirms that Thomas and Sarah were murdered because Thomas had evidence of Crawford's involvement in a stage robbery that killed 2 passengers. Makes what you did, Adam, while still outside the law, more clearly a case of justice being served." "What does this mean, exactly?" Olivia asked. "It means the territorial governor has reviewed the case and decided to issue a formal pardon for Adam's actions against the Crawford gang," Harrington said, producing an official document from inside his coat. "No more looking over your shoulder, Adam. No more wondering if some new lawman might decide to press charges. It's over. Officially and completely." Adam stared at the pardon in disbelief, his hand trembling slightly as he accepted it. "I never expected this," he said hoarsely. "Never thought it possible. Times change. People change." Harrington glanced meaningfully at Olivia and little Thomas, who was happily playing with Peterson's daughter nearby. "You've built something worth preserving here, Adam. The governor recognizes that." Later that night, after the guests had departed and Thomas was asleep in his cradle, Adam and Olivia sat on the porch swing, the pardon on the table beside them. "How does it feel?" Olivia asked softly. "To have that chapter truly closed?" Adam was silent for a long moment, his arm around her shoulders, his expression thoughtful. "Like a weight I didn't realize I was still carrying has been lifted," he finally said. "Not because I feared prosecution, I made peace with the consequences of my actions long ago, but because it feels like forgiveness, I suppose. Like Thomas and Sarah can truly rest now." Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "What do you want to do now, with this fresh start?" "Expand the school, perhaps," Adam suggested. "Build a proper schoolhouse in town, with room for more students. Maybe even a lending library, in Thomas's memory." "I'd like that," Olivia said warmly. "And perhaps a brother or sister for Thomas someday." Adam's arm tightened around her, and he pressed a kiss to her temple. "Nothing would make me happier." As they sat together in the growing darkness, the future stretching before them full of possibilities, Olivia reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. From that desperate night in the barn, half frozen and alone, to this life of love and purpose it seemed almost miraculous. "I love you, Adam Jameson," she whispered. "Every day, more than the day before." "And I love you, Olivia Jameson," he replied, his voice deep with emotion. "You found me when I was frozen inside, as surely as I found you in that barn. Your kindness, your courage, your stubborn refusal to give up on me, they saved my life as surely as shelter saved yours." The Nevada night wrapped around them like a blanket, the stars bright overhead, the sound of their sleeping sons' soft breathing drifting through the open window. On the land that had once witnessed such tragedy, new life flourished, a testament to the resilience of the human heart and the transformative power of love. In the years that followed, the Jameson family grew and prospered. Thomas was joined by a sister, Sarah, in 1879, and another brother, William, in 1881. The free school expanded into a proper academy with multiple teachers, including Olivia as headmistress, and a library named in honor of Thomas and Sarah Jameson. Adam continued to ranch successfully, eventually becoming one of the most respected cattlemen in eastern Nevada. The widowmaker reputation faded into history, replaced by recognition of his contributions to Pioche and his character as a husband, father, and citizen. And on cold winter nights, when the wind howled around the ranch house corners, Adam and Olivia would sometimes reminisce about that fateful December night in 1876, when a ruthless cowboy found a freezing schoolteacher in his barn and both their lives were changed forever.